The presidential campaign in Ukraine is on the rise, and what you think the major, there is few front runners already. Do they have a common strengths and common weaknesses?
Well, I think it's difficult to sort of talk about these, but I would say that the common weaknesses are that they don't always abide by their election programs, but that's a common problem in Ukraine. I think Viktor Yushchenko forgot about his election program a day after he was elected in January 2005. And he probably doesn't remember those 10 steps or 14 draft decrees. But so I think that's one problem. The question of NATO, which everybody brings up as a problem for Tymoshenko, is something that people always ignore. And the fact that of all the programs of our Ukraine from 2002 to the president, they never mentioned NATO once in those programs. I deliberately went to take a look at them. So this isn't a problem of Tymoshenko. This is a problem of Ukrainian politicians not being truthful to their voters. Of not being responsible to voters. And of course, NATO is a very difficult issue. But when we look at the different teams, the three teams, Yanukovych, Tymoshenko and Yatsenyuk, the three top candidates, at the moment at least, I think it will change, but I think the moment. Of those three candidates, the only candidate who has pro-NATO, pro-EU people in the team, such as, for example, Grigory Nemyria, is the Tymoshenko. I don't see those in the party regions. Party regions' weakness is that it seems to be even more pro-Russian than I would say Lukashenko and Kuchma. For example, Lukashenko is not interested in recognizing the separatist republics, South Ossetia and Abkhazia, but Yanukovych is. I think Kuchma, ironically, because he's from a different background, communist nomenclatura in Ukraine, whereas Yanukovych is from more working class background in Donetsk. They have very different approaches. So I'm more afraid in some ways that when people compare, oh well, Kuchma in 1994 came to power on a pro-Russian platform, but so what? He changed very quickly. I don't think Kuchma and Yanukovych are very similar, and I don't think Ukraine today is similar to Ukraine in 1994. And of course in 1994 we had Boris Yeltsin, not Putin and Medvedev.
What do you see, what do you think would be which candidate Ukraine would step forward, which candidates Ukraine would step forward?
Well, I think there's no question, that, and I think most people now are coming to that conclusion in Ukraine and in the West, particularly I think in Washington, that the two people in the second round will be Tymoshenko and Yanukovych. I mean, I don't think that can change. Those figures of the two top politicians in Ukraine have been stable for approximately 2 years. Not the figures, but the actual two first. Sometimes Tymoshenko top, sometimes Yanukovych. I think that what will change more likely is the third candidate. I have a strong suspicion that Arseny Yatsenyuk's candidacy will decline in popularity, and I think Anatoly Gritsenko could actually come up as a strong candidate in the elections. I think we shouldn't always understand opinion polls. Opinion polls and elections are two different things. So I think it will be a battle in the second round between Tymoshenko and Yanukovych. The key battleground, which will be different this time in the elections, first time ever in Ukraine, the key battleground will be West Ukraine. Always it was Central Ukraine or East Ukraine. Because why West Ukraine? Because in West Ukraine you have so many candidates fighting for the orange vote. Whereas in Central Ukraine, Tymoshenko dominates, in East Ukraine, Yanukovych dominates. So West Ukraine in the first round will be, you have 4, 5, maybe 6 candidates from that former orange camp, all battling it.
You didn't mention one of the main candidates, President Yushchenko.
Well, he's not a main candidate.
He's running as well.
He's not a main candidate.
That's what I would like to ask you. Well, if you can overview his 5 years of his presidency, what did it bring to Ukraine? What it didn't? What was his main accomplishments? What was his main disappointments?
Well, just more generally, first, I'm writing a history of contemporary Ukraine, and the main theme for this period of time will be certainly missed opportunities. Everybody says that in Ukraine, in the West, this is a time of missed opportunities. Also, a time where the president got involved in quarrels when he should be standing above those quarrels. I think that some people would argue that his two main achievements are the question of nation building, the rewriting of history, and also democratization. The list of his non-achievements are far greater. And I think we have to look today, for example, to say what looks better or worse today 5 years on than it was 5 years ago. And many things look worse today than they were 5 years ago. For example, rule of law. There's complete anarchy and corruption in the rule of law, maybe even worse than Kuchma. As a lawyer said to me in Kyiv, at least under Kuchma it was controlled corruption. Now it's complete anarchy. Constitutional chaos. Ukraine will not survive another 5 years as an independent state if this constitutional anarchy continues. Thirdly, corruption today is worse. If you look at Transparency International, Ukraine improved its score on battling corruption in 2005, 2006, but from 2007 onwards it declined. Georgia, in contrast, has been going from strength to strength in battling corruption. And this year, only 4 European Union countries have a better record than Georgia in battling corruption. But that's a question of political will. Yes, he's an autocrat, Mr. Saakashvili, but he's also genuine in battling corruption and rule of law issues. And I think the other missed opportunity is, of course, NATO. We all remember, I was working in Washington in 2006, that Ukraine had a chance to join a membership action plan in Riga in November 2006. And the only reason, the main reason, why that didn't happen was because of Viktor Yushchenko not wanting Tymoshenko to come back as prime minister. Hence, the coalition negotiations lasted 3 months. They collapsed. President Bush was supposed to come to Kiev in June of 2006. He didn't. At the last minute, he cancelled, went to Budapest instead. This was a great missed opportunity, which will now drag on for many years. I don't think NATO is completely dead in Ukraine, but it certainly is an issue on the back burner, as they say. So I think those are the main areas. But we should remember, when we're looking at nation building, yes, Yushchenko personalized nation building very much, such as the Ukrainian famine. But it was Kuchma and Kravchuk who first raised the Ukrainian famine, and the Ukrainian diaspora in 1983. The famine was declared a genocide against Ukrainians by Kuchma in 2003, not by Yushchenko. So this has been a process that's going along. But certainly people remember Yushchenko in terms of history rewriting, the famine, and to some degree media pluralism and free elections.
And one more last question. What would be the main goals for Ukraine in the next 5 years?
It has to deal with these areas that are on the negative side of Yushchenko's 5-year term. Constitution has to be resolved straight away in the first year. Ukraine can't continue with this, as Judge Bogdan Fotey calls it, constitutional legal anarchy. I mean, this is chaos. That needs to be resolved one way or the other. You can't have either a semi-presidential or semi-parliamentary system. Always leads to conflict. You either have to have full presidential or full parliamentary. Most of the post-communist countries who have become democracies, and in the European Union and NATO, are parliamentary systems. So that, rule of law issues. I mean, the prosecutors I would, if it was me, sack everybody above the age of 40 in the prosecutor's office. This is a corrupt and useless institution. Secondly, deal with the judiciary and the rule of law issues. I don't know what to do there, but certainly that needs to be dealt with. And hopefully some political will against corruption. One of the missed areas which has led to this estrangement between voters and Ukrainian institutions and politicians is the fact that one of the main issues of the Orange Revolution was that everybody is equal before the law. And we still see today, 5 years on, that Ukraine's elites are above the law and they're not accountable to anybody.
And that has to be changed.
That has to be changed.
Thank you.